What's up guys, Evan with Backwoods. Today we're going to go through an installation and overview of our brand new Gladiator Bed Rack system. We'll also go through all the optional accessories as well. I'm going to do this video in two parts. The second half we'll go through the detailed installation of the rack and all the accessories. But first I want to point out some of the features and why you would want this. So I do want to point out it fits all Gladiators, but you do need the bed rails. So this is a really modular rack. It can be used for work or play. It's really universal. We have mounting holes for items all over the rack, including our multi-slot, which has spots for 3/8 or 1/4 inch carriage bolts. We also have holes for wiring to go through, like a wiring chase. We have spots for chase lights. It's really just endless as far as what you can attach to it. Next, let's get into the accessories. And I want to start with my favorite, which is our bed rack storage box. And I love the functionality and the aesthetics of this thing. I love how sleek and integrated it looks. It's on the same angle as the bed rack itself. On the door, we've got this stiffener which doubles as a molly panel. It gives you all sorts of areas to mount things to, and it's specifically pre-drilled for the Rotopax mounts. As we get into the box, we've got these really nice weather-resistant latch covers to keep the elements out. Very heavy-duty, lockable latches. It comes standard with 2 struts with an optional and included 3rd strut that you would install if you're going to run 2 or 4 gallons of gas or water. Also comes standard with 2 shelves which are installed in the adjustable tracks in the back of the box, so you can install these as high or low as you need. We've got people that use these for work, camping, mountain bike gear, recovery gear, really just anything that needs to be outside of the truck because it's wet, dirty, stinky, you name it, you can keep it in here. Coming around to the passenger side, we've installed our universal bike tray mounts. So these are meant to work with any single bike tray, especially if it has this lengthwise slot along the bottom. We have slots left to right, so it easily mounts with the hardware that's included with the bike tray. Now these are adjustable in that this mount can pivot up and down a few degrees, up to 90 degrees, so you can actually even mount it on a vertical surface if that's what you're working with. On this side of the rack, you can see our included side rails. So you get 4 of these with this rack. We chose to use 2 on this specific rack because we have the box on the driver's side. But it's really just a strengthening bar and a universal mounting surface for things like tools, shovels, axes. Next, we've got our Dogbone traction board mount. So you could use it for mounting lots of different things, but it's specifically designed for MaxTrax or other traction boards. So these outer angled slots that make it look like a dog bone will be where you mount the mounting pins for your traction boards. So it'll mount just like that. Also, the Dogbone is pre-drilled for Rotopax mounts. Next, we've got the bed rack topper. Now, if you need to gain a little extra height because your tent or your kayaks or whatever you're putting on top, this is essentially a roof rack for your bed rack. Not only does it give you the extra height, but it gives you another awesome mounting surface. So a few of the features, it's got extra strong 1x3 crossbar extrusions that you can really put anywhere along this surface, although we do have pre-drilled holes if you want to use our deck panels. Also, these grab handles here are grab handles by themselves, but they're also pre-drilled to work with the Agency 6 grab handle, which is a really nice touch. Now, speaking of the deck panels, here we are at the top on the topper. The deck panel is specifically designed for our roof racks and our toppers. This is our 11-inch version, which is perfect for the spacing we've picked with our extrusions. Now you can completely deck the entire surface if you want it to all be walkable. Now the holes are all really intentional, really specific. The cross shape is specific to any E-track mount, like these little D-rings or this style of strap. The snowmen, as I call them, are L-track, and they're specifically for any L-track accessories. These keyholes and double keyholes are for carriage bolts. So a 3/8 carriage bolt will drop in and lock into place, and the same with a 1/4 inch carriage bolt. And the reasoning for all the holes being like this is that you don't have to get underneath. You can do everything from the top side, including the carriage bolt. So if you have a total decked surface, you don't have to figure out how to reach around underneath. And lastly, these big slots are just for the hook of a ratchet strap. That covers all the accessories. Now we'll get into the installation. At this point in the video, we're going to start installing these parts. We're going to start with the bed rack. I want to point out again that this will fit any Gladiator as long as it has the bed accessory rails. And when you open the box, this is what you're going to see. You'll have the uprights, the mounts for the uprights, all the hardware, which we'll go over in detail as we go, the side rails or accessory rails, and the crossbars. let's get started. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can assemble this whole thing loosely on the ground, on your driveway, on the lawn, and just put the whole thing together without anything being tight, and then you need a buddy or two to help you set it up on the truck bed. My preferred method is one piece at a time on the bed. So we're basically going to start at the bottom and work our way to the top. So that means we're going to start with our uprights, and it goes on here like this, and we'll put the mounts like this. We'll put these inside this and bolt them on, and these are designed to attach directly to this rail. So we have these T-slot nuts that go into the rail, and you put them in at the very front and slide them to the back. So now we'll go ahead and do that. So we're going to use these black 3/8 carriage bolts, and on the inside we'll use stainless flat washer, and we'll use these Nylock lock nuts. With everything we're about to do, you can snug these down, but don't tighten them. You want to be able to keep the adjustment. Now we're going to use these stainless button head bolts and attach this loosely to the track nuts. We'll do the same thing on the other 3 mounts. Next, we're going to put on one of our side accessory panels. And you don't have to do these in this order, but I kind of like to do this first because that's going to set my spacing front to back. So where you put these height-wise and how many is really up to you, and it's going to depend on what accessories you want to run on the side of these. For this particular install, we know we're going to want to run the bike tray mounts, which need these bottom 4 holes. So this is the lowest I can put my bottom one. Make sure you mount these with the mountain peaks up. All right, so we're going to use some more of this black 3/8 stainless hardware. And again, we're going to use a flat washer and a Nylock on the inside. All right, we've got all these where we want them. As you notice, it can shift a little bit, and we want these square. So I'm going to use a square to make sure that I'm perpendicular this bar to this upright. And as I hold it square, I'll tighten these down. That's going to be a 9/16 socket. I'll do the same all the way around the rest of the truck where I have crossbars. All right, this is worth noting on the accessory rails if you have the storage box installed. So on this particular install, we're going to use a storage box on the driver's side, but I have temporarily installed one of these accessory rails to set the spacing front to back so that when it is time to put the box on, these uprights have the correct spacing. Next step's the crossbars, and we're going to leave these loosely installed, and it's going to be the smaller, the 1/4 carriage bolts. So for this application, it's going to be all 3 of these holes will line up. So I'm just going to put all the hardware in and then come back and add the washers and nuts later. I've got all 12 of these in. Now I'm going to add the washers and nuts, and I'll get them snug but not tight because I still want to be able to adjust them. All right, everything's in, everything's snug. Now it's time to adjust it, tighten it down. So there's a few different adjustments. Mainly there's fore and aft, and then there's the angle. You have just a little bit of adjustment on this angle, and this, I don't have a measurement because I think it's truly better to eyeball this. You want this cross rail parallel with the bed or the cab or your back window line. There's not a whole lot of adjustments, so that's pretty easy to dial in. And then as far as fore and aft, that's really totally up to you. On this install, my preference is as far forward as I can get it, which is where it is. The main reason it stopped here is because this is as far forward as the hardware is allowed to go in this track without kind of falling out the installation hole. So I've got this exactly where I want it, front to back, and then I'm going to stand back and make sure I like this level line, and I'm going to tighten this thing down from the bottom up, just the same way we assembled it. So I'll tighten up the button heads that go into the rails, and then I'll tighten down these 3/8 carriage bolts, and then lastly we'll grab the 1/4 up top. That's it for the bed rack. If you're going to install the topper, hang in there, we'll get to that, but first we're going to install the storage box and some of our accessories like the Dogbone and the bike tray mounts. Now for the storage box. we're going to do a little bit of pre-assembly before we put it on the truck. Now it comes mostly assembled. What you see when you open the box, of course, is the box itself, the MOLLE panel that ships uninstalled for its own security, and the mounts, upper mounts, lower mounts, the hardware kit, the drain plug hole, or the drain plug itself, and the keys for the locks. So we're going to put this MOLLE panel on, and we're going to adjust these shelves because they'll come installed in the box, but probably not where you want them. I've moved the left one up already, and in just a minute we'll go through how to move this other one up. You'll also notice there's an extra strut or shock, and that's because it will go in this center location if you're going to put something heavy on your door, like a couple gallons of water or fuel in a Rotopax or anything else. With just the two, it's relatively stiff. If you put the water on there, you're going to want the third one. So the way our shelf works is we utilize the square shoulder on carriage bolts. So we've got these 4 carriage bolts pre-installed in the shelf, and then we have the shelf rails in the back of the box. They have all these T-slots that are perfectly sized for a 1/4 inch carriage bolt, so you'll slide the shelf in and drop it down, or up, depending on how you need the adjustment. But that's what's going to be happening behind the scenes. You can't really see this in the video as I do it, so I wanted to point this out first. Okay, I'm going to install this one on the same level as this. Of course, it's totally up to you. It helps to have these kind of pushed outwards as you get them started. That way they can align in the track really easily. I'm going to do one side at a time. So I'm starting on my left, and then we'll come over here to the right. That side's already in, so now I just tighten it down. Next, we're going to stick our front panel on. Now you see I already have some Rotopax mounts on here, and we have these holes pre-cut for the Rotopax mounts that use this plate. These 4 holes will correlate with the 4 square holes here. Now that's if you're going to run this Rotopax or the two gallons that interlock. This particular customer had 2 of the non-interlocking 2-gallon tanks. So that gave me a great opportunity to show that it's really easy to relocate, drill new holes. It's aluminum, so it drills really easily. So we just measured out and put these right where we wanted, and we've pre-installed them. You definitely want to install these before you put the panel on, because otherwise it would be nearly impossible to get a tool to the back side. So now that we have our Rotopax mounts on, we're going to go ahead and mount it to the box. This is really easy. I'm just going to open the lid and use the included hardware. It's going to be 8 bolts to put this on with these bonded sealing washers. So we'll get to it in a minute, but the rubber side seals out moisture, so that'll go on the inside of the box. But to start, I'm just going to set this in place. And to keep it from sliding around, I'm just going to line up a few of the holes, put the bolts in so it can't go anywhere. All right, as I mentioned, with these bonded sealing washers, the sealing side, the rubber side, will go against the box to seal out any moisture. So they're a little bit hard to put on, but just press them into place and then cap it off with another nylock. We'll do that for the remaining bolts. Tighten them down. It's a 5/32 Allen and a 7/16 socket. You really just need to go until that rubber part starts to squish out around the edges. All right, we're here at the back of the box for the upper mounts. These can only really be installed one way with a lot of adjustment on these slots. So since we're going to put the bolts through slots, we're going to use a flat washer on the bolt. And just like on the other hardware, we're going to use these bonded washers on the inside, followed by a nylock. After this, we'll do the same thing on the other side. Snug these down, but leave them loose enough so the bracket can still slide back and forth for some adjustment. Okay, to mount the box, you've got 2 sets of mounts. You've got the upper brackets, which we'll go over in a minute, and you've got the lower brackets. The lower brackets, there's a left and a right, or I guess really a front and a back. They're a mirror of each other. And these are going to go on the inside of the upright using the same upright hardware. And they're going to kick back towards the box. So I took the hardware out ahead of time, obviously, just to make this quicker. And you put it back in, and we're going to put the same hardware back together and snug it down, but not so much that we can't adjust, because I want to be able to adjust this thing until the box is the rest of the way tightened down. Okay, the next step is to set it in place. Now, I've done this off camera because I don't have a helper handy, but you want a helper just because it's really awkward to get the first bolt in. And what your goal is to do is to get the upper mount attached to this multi-slot here. So I don't really care about the adjustment right now. All I really want to do is get a bolt in there and hang it in place so that it's safe. So I'm not going to worry about positioning. I'm just going to get a bolt in with a nut started on it and do that on both sides of the top. So now that I have both top bolts in, at least it's not going to fall. Next, we'll align the lower holes. So just look for those holes to line up. We're going into the box, so once again we'll use bonded washers on the inside. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of the box, and then we'll work on alignment. Now, to get it aligned, you're going to want to see what it looks like with the door closed. So I'm going to use the door to basically make this flush. Now, you can really do whatever you want. You've got a bit of adjustment in and out, but I think that looks the cleanest. So I'm going to start at the bottom on this side, and then I'll go to that side on the bottom. Then we'll be able to tilt the top into position. So that's a 5/32 Allen and a 7/16 socket or wrench. Don't forget to tighten down your main mounting bolts again, these carriage bolts with the 9/16. To get the alignment right on the front face, the top seems to be too far in, so I'm basically going to pull out on the top and tighten down the upper mounts. You can also lift up on the bottom to achieve the same thing. Again, this is where it comes in handy to have a friend do that while you tighten the bolts down, or vice versa. The last little adjustment is the gap between the upright and the box. There's room for it to go either way, just as long as it looks about the same at the bottom as it does the top. Set that as you tighten down the bolts that go from the box mount through the back of the box. Now for the Dogbone traction board mount. They have all these slotted mounting holes, so take your pick. I'm going to put this on the top crossbar for this specific scenario, and I'm going to use these outermost mounting slots. I'm going to use all 4 bolts. I'm going to finish up the back side with a flat washer and a nylock. Make sure it's centered and snug it down. Easy as that. Next, we're going to install the bike tray mounts. Now, these are a neat little product because they're pretty universal. They have this curved slot which allows for adjustment in the angle, all the way from a 90 degrees, so you can mount this on a totally vertical surface, or you can swoop it on down and mount it on something really angled like our bed rack. And if you remember, we left the bottom 4 holes open for this purpose. So the hardware kit is divided into 2 sections, mounting and assembly. The mounting hardware mounts the back of this to the surface that you're putting it on. The assembly hardware bolts this piece to this piece. So we're going to start with the assembly hardware. And you can see the outer holes are square, so that calls for our carriage bolts. And then on the inside, you'll do a flat washer and a nylock. Don't tighten these down all the way yet. All right, we'll do the same thing on the other mount. You'll notice in the mounting part of the hardware kit, there are 3/8 carriage bolts as well as 1/4 inch carriage bolts. And that's because we use our multi-slot here. The upper and lower portions of the slot are for 1/4 inch and the middle is for 3/8. So in this application, we have 3/8 holes, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to put my 3/8 carriage bolts through the big part of the slot and install them in this lower set here. And like always, a flat washer and a nylock on the inside. Last step is to tighten down the adjustment bolts. Just for fun, we'll see how close to 0 we can get it. Oh, how about that? We'll take that. Then we'll do the same thing on the back one. The last step is to mount whatever type of bike tray you have. The 1-ups and pretty much most of these single bike trays have a slot running all the way down them. So you'll just line up the hardware in the slot with our mount. So I'm not going to actually bolt this one up, but just to illustrate, and you've got some freedom to adjust in and out as well. Next, we're going to put our topper together. Now this time I think it's actually easy to assemble the topper here on the table, and then just set the whole assembly up on top and bolt it on. So what you've got are the 4 mounts that are going to attach to the cross members of the bed rack. You've got the extrusion cross members, got these nice beefy 1x3s, and you've got the side rails and of course the hardware. So we're going to start by assembling the extrusions to the side rails. Now you can put the crossbars really anywhere you want along the topper because we have these long slots. I'm going to use the predetermined holes just because that gives you a nice even spacing all the way around. There's 6 spots to put them, including this angled back area, which gives you a slanted last extrusion, so kind of a fairing look. So we've got 6 spots and we have 6 extrusions. One thing to note, some of these extrusions have these holes drilled in them. That's just part of the manufacturing process. You're going to want to turn that down so it's not visible from the top. So I'm just going to go along and use the 1/4 by 3/4 inch bolts and get a bunch of these started. I'm not going to worry about tightening it up just yet. So since I'm using the predetermined holes, they're laser cut, perfect fit, I'm not going to use flat washers. If I were putting the extrusions in the slot, I would definitely use a flat washer here on the outside, but I think it looks a lot cleaner this way. Now that the extrusions are all in, we're going to tighten them all down, and that'll really square everything up. Now, I really don't recommend you use an impact for this part, as tempting as it is, but it's really easy to strip out the heads of these button head bolts. So I don't think it matters which order you do this in, as long as they all get snug. Next step are the mounts. We've got 4 of them. They're going to go with the smooth side down, and you'll see these double holes, 1 at each corner. We're going to install these longer button head bolts, the 1-inch ones, with a flat washer from the outside, and then on the inside we'll use a flat washer and a nylock. We'll do the same thing on the other 3. So as we tighten down these mounts, I'm going to leave them at their lowest position, and the reason for that is as we put this on the rack, I don't want it to hang down too low. I don't want the rack itself to hang down too low and risk scratching something. So this will set the rack at its highest position, and it's going to be real easy to go in, loosen these, and let the rack sit a little lower after we're done. At this point, this is ready to set on top of the bed rack. Grab a buddy or 2 to help you lift this in place. The Backwoods logo goes to the back along with this rear fairing. All right, so to mount these, we're going to use our 3/8 carriage bolts that come with the kit. And you'll see we have 3 mounting holes to choose from. We're only going to need 2 bolts per hole, so I'm going to choose the outer and the inner hole. And I'm just going to drop the carriage bolt down from the top. Then, like always, I'll add our flat washer and our lock nut. I'm going to leave these all relatively loose until I have them all in. After this, I'll do the same thing on the other 3. All right, we've got all the bolts in. Quick note, I did have to loosen these 2 because those are in slotted holes, and to get the adjustment front to back just right, I had to loosen them back up as I installed it. I've got these wrenches in place here to use as spacers because the next step is going to be tightening these down with the height that we like. And to me, I think this a little bit over 1/4 inch, I think that looks good against the toolbox. So I got 2 of the same size wrenches, and they're going to hold it in place while I tighten it down. So that's my next step. I'm going to tighten down the side bolts and the bottom bolts, and it doesn't matter which order we do it in. As always, go back through and make sure that you've actually tightened down all your bolts. And that wraps it up. Thanks for watching our install and overview video. If you have any questions, reach out to us at backwoodsadventuremods.com.